Hello, this is Sinta Ebersohn from Fair Divorce, and we are celebrating the International Day of the Family, which is this Saturday. And with me is Paulo Neves, who does a divorce recovery course in Johannesburg in South Africa. And we're going to talk about some things and challenges that divorced families and blended families face and see what helpful tips he can give us. Paulo, please tell us, in your experience with all the divorce recovery work that you have done, what have you found to be the biggest challenges that families face with divorce?
Sure. You're going to ask me to condense 14 years of running a workshop in the space of a couple of minutes. There's been a number of challenges, but to me, if I may say something that I pick up that is a challenge, not just for the new marriage that comes together, but for everyone involved, basically is centrifugal around one word, okay? Mm-hmm. That word is really acceptance, okay? And ultimately, when there is a husband and wife, when there's two spouses coming together, and basically I'm talking from second families, from blended families, okay? Mm-hmm. Basically, you are asking a whole plural. The word is plural, not singular. It's not just about a man and a woman loving one another, but it's the consequence of that relationship, asking that all the children, because when it comes to second marriages, it's difficult not to have children, okay? But now you're asking that collective of people to come together and regardless start loving one another in possibly the most difficult and confused role on the planet right now, which is the role of father or the role of mother, you know, which takes a very sensitive part. It's like the throne room in a person's emotions, and you asking a stranger to sit in that space, and ultimately the majority of the times the parents haven't allowed the children to deal and express the devastation, the hurt that came with the divorce, or came with what happened to the absolvement of the first marriage. You know, and especially in teenagers are so difficult, you know, and now you're asking this whole collective of people to accept this new mother or accept this new father, okay, sit on the most sensitive throne you have in your heart, and just, you know, pretend like the other person, you know, didn't even exist. And it takes time. It takes a lot of work. But the most important thing is it's going to take a lot of love, you know, and you know, and saying, and right now, but again, another word that is very misunderstood on planet Earth is the word love. In the dictionary, and I've really researched this in extent, is that the word love in the dictionary is noun and verb. So when most people talk about love, it's a complete misunderstanding, because what you call it, we're not triggering an emotion. We're actually the majority of the times triggering a behavior. And ultimately, you need your emotion needs to extend into behavior. And when it comes to blended families, your patience, you know, your kindness, your willingness is going to be tested in so many levels. So ultimately, as much as it's a one word, acceptance, okay, the ramifications and consequences to this word are unbelievable. You know, so ultimately, that is really my pickup, is that when people come together, if that acceptance is not there, regrettably, you're setting yourself up for failure from the word go. And,
I love the way that you are explaining this, that there's a whole collective of people. And it's very true what you're saying. Everybody has to adjust to all these changes, and it's actually an impossible task if you think about it. Most of us are just drawn into it without even having been asked, how do you feel about it? What do you think about it?
Correct. And if there is an unwillingness, you know, if there's an unwillingness, it's you immediately starting off on the wrong foot. Okay, the blended families. So my family is blended. Okay, my second wife and I, we're going on 14 years of marriage, so we basically are on our 13th year of marriage. Okay, and to turn around and say that it's been everything but roses would be an absolute lie, and I'm not here for entertainment. You know, I value what you and I are doing, because I think that there's too much pretense on planet Earth at this point in time. You know, and any blended marriage, any second marriage coming into existence, the number one key for failure in second marriages, and this is recorded, okay, this is fact, is children. So children, number one, and finances, number two. Okay, so and why children? Because ultimately, we have so much tolerance for my own biological son or daughter. Okay, but my tolerance for somebody else's child, my stepchild, may not be as high as my own personal one. Okay, yes. And ultimately there's this fairness and inequality that needs to be overstepped. The children are put in a position that I need to accept, and maybe they don't like her or they don't like him. You know, ultimately, and let's be honest now. Fair enough. You know, I may choose, and I'm going to use, I may choose to have loved and willing to collaborate my life with my wife. But that doesn't mean the rest of the planet would want to collaborate with her. Yes. You know, definitely not her children. And right now, so technically our love is creating an imposition upon these children. Okay, and it's basically unfair. It's this imposition. So unless my love that I have for my wife and her love for me, if that is not going to overflow and basically demonstrate to them, you know, saying I love you is an emotion. It's an emotional thing. Okay, it just means I have emotions for that person. It doesn't demonstrate anything. But if I come into the equation and I demonstrate my love for them, they will then come to acknowledge. So they may start, children may start unwilling to accept this person. But if this person demonstrates that they are loving towards them in a behavior, you know, in a benevolence, that they are approachable, then that can change the dynamic of the family. But it comes down to what we've spoken about, acceptance, okay? And the lead here has to be taken by the two parents. And if it's one thing to love one another, but do you love the other person enough to love her children? You know, can you demonstrate that love towards them like you can towards your wife? Okay, and I'm going to say this, and in the many of the workshops that we talk about, you know, when you talk about teaching that love is patient, love is kind, love is not rude, love is not, if you cannot be that, if you cannot display that, so many of us going into marriage, we want that from the other person, you know, so we have this expectation that we want the other person to make me happy. You know, I want you to make me happy. Okay, but that's not quite the role. The role is that I apply my kindness, I apply my understanding, I apply my morals, I apply my long suffering, I serve the marriage, and in serving the wife, I serve the kids. When you go into that role, it's a completely change of a dynamic. Okay, but if you each going to be pulling your own way in this almost like second marriages are like the perfect storm for failure. Everything is set against you to fail. If you're not going to overcome that, so if I were to draw a graph of what it would be like coming into second marriages, you immediately start off on a high negative, and basically as you begin to love, your graph comes down to an acceptance. You know, so you're never going to start off on this paradise where everything is beautiful and, you know, we're just going to love each other and be happy forever and a day. You know, this is not a fairy tale, you know, and they loved each other forever and ever. Amen. No, it doesn't quite work like that. You know, so, it's
very much about the verb and what you do. You've got to create that, eh? But I want to ask you about acceptance when we go through a divorce. It's part of accepting that process and the end result of that also that we need to work hard on, because if we haven't done that acceptance, then we carry that into the new relationship, with the new marriage, with the new blended family as well.
Absolutely, what you call it. So there's many things that when it comes to the word of acceptance, okay, because it's not applying the word in areas that is convenient. It's not about me accepting, oh, Paulo's a male and he likes Manchester United. Okay, look, I've accepted myself. No, those are very minor semantic details. Okay, I have to come to the point that, what you call it, that I have to accept and take responsibility for what I did in my first marriage. I have to accept that I didn't treat my first wife the way I did. I have to accept that I was not very patient with her, that I was not very kind with her. I have to accept that I was very abusive to her. I have to accept that I, what you call it, was not long-suffering, that I was an authoritarian. I demanded my own way. Now, again, I'm speaking quite openly about my faults, because I have to come to that. I have to come to the realization that I have a very low self-esteem. You know, men don't walk around, you know, people don't walk around, you know, saying, you know, I've got a low self-esteem. I had to accept all of those things. I had to accept the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mm-hmm. Right now, you can play some Clint Eastwood music if you want to.
That's a good idea.
It's tumble in the background. You know?
But it's very true.
We're very quick to want to embrace and promote, you know, what we call our assets and values, and you know, the good about us. Okay? But if you were to actually write a list, you must probably discover that there's more work in all the other areas than what there are in those areas. Yes. So I had to accept that I had the major contributing factors towards the failure of my first marriage. Yes. And by accepting and embracing my failures, okay, I have now created a platform and set, it's almost like I've started the race. So by accepting it, I've started the race, because it doesn't mean the work is not done. It yes. just means I have an acknowledgement. It's like it's like, you know, you turn around and say, I'm unfit. I need to get fit. So what do? Okay, so acknowledging that I'm unfit, acknowledging is now the first step into getting fitness. What's my next step? I'm going to have to go to, you know, find a program that I can apply a discipline or an activity that promotes cardiovascular activity, whether I'm going to go run around the block 27 times, or, you know, start with one, or whether I'm going to go to gym on the treadmill, or, you know, maybe do rowing. But whatever it is, it's got to be some sort of input into my body where I'm going to increase my heart rates. Okay, I then have to position myself, create the time. See, in all of that, I have to come to a place that it's not just accepting and saying, okay, I did this or I did that, I'm good now. No. You have to make countermeasures and discipline yourself. I mean, imagine that word. We're talking about discipline here. Since we're on planet Earth right now, you speak about discipline and they want to shoot you down, because those words are not spoken about in this day and age. But yet it's very important, because it's all good and well me saying, okay, I've got anger issues. Okay, so I've got anger issues. But what am I doing to control my anger? You know, what are my triggers? What sets me off? And unless I introspect myself and do something about it, all I'm going to keep doing is I'm just going to go into my next relationship and I'm just going to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over. Now, one thing I do want to say, which is important here, okay, is that just because I'm talking about it, doesn't mean that in no way that I've mastered this. Far from it. On the contrary, okay, it just means that I'm in constant taking stock of my behavior, taking stock of my activities, taking stock of my emotional dispositions, taking stock of my outbursts, monitoring myself more and more to make sure that what used to affect me doesn't have the same influence over me like it used to. And by making those countermeasures, I begin to find myself that, yes, I still have anger issues, but I'm not as angry as what it used to be. So my frequency begins to be more modulated, begins to change. But it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of discipline, and it's a constant activity, working on myself to be able to be a better spouse and a better father figure to our girls. You know, so it's not, this is not a holiday camp. This is not, you know, we think that marriage, you're going into marriage and it's like, you know, Sinta, this is her responsibility to make me happy in this, but it's not. It's my activity, my work effort into the marriage, my loving my spouse, loving my daughters, loving my life, cultivating their environment, okay, that creates the environment for them to want to receive and participate. Because it's one thing, so I accept Paulo that he's now Anna's husband, you know, but he's a real ogre of a human being, and I don't like him and I want nothing to do with him. You know, now you've got to conquer that person, that you mean them no harm, and that you're actually going to love them, because now they actually are your daughter. Now, they, in a natural environment, they may have not been my natural choices of a daughter, but that's what, those are the cards I've been given. That's what I've inherited it. And whether I like it or not, I'm going to love that person regardless. You know, and that needs to be communicated to the children. It's very important. They need to know that you love them regardless. Point blank. You're there for them. You're the new father figure, the new mother figure. And my job is to love you and create that environment that you are loved, that you are safe, and that we can be a family unit together.
And key to what you're saying for me also is work, but the work on yourself, because we can't do other people's work. We can't work on other people. We can only work on ourselves and learn more about ourselves and grow and do better than we did before. But I think often we make the mistake of waiting and expecting the other person to change their behavior or their attitude, and we can't influence that.
No, not at all, not at all. I've heard a lot of things where I've heard people turn around and say, what you call it, you give and take. And I completely disagree with that, okay? Because you don't give and take, okay? You offer and you receive, okay? Yes. Because I offer, my wife can receive from me, and if she offers, I can receive from her. So there's no giving and taking. There's no imposition. There's no demanding. I always say to everyone that comes on our workshops, especially when we start getting towards the end and we start talking about remarriage and dating and courtship and all of that. Okay, when you go into when you do find yourself being married again, okay, is that it comes to a place that the decisions that you make is not about you. The decisions, the question you need to ask yourself all the time is this, you know, how does this benefit my matrimony? And I've just taken my ring off to give an example. So the decisions that Paulo makes is for the benefit of his matrimony. And the decisions that Anna makes, my wife, is for the benefit of our matrimony. And there's a lot of times that what's good for the matrimony may not necessarily be good for you.
Yes.
You know what you call it, you know, to me, and I'm going to go on the wild side now and apologize to you. Like, you know, to me, if I had to arrive at work and suddenly I had to discover that, you know, I've just won a trip around the world with the Playboy bunnies and I'll be back in 6 months' time, you know, like, wow, I'm going around the world with all the Playboy girls, you know. Good for me. Wow, that sounds like, you know, great fun. You know, yeah, let's go around the world with all the Playboy bunnies. So it may be fantastic for me. But what's it going to do with my marriage? Okay. Yes. And I know that's very exaggerated and may sound like I'm very carnally minded or whatever, but I'm really pushing this on the dark side, you know, just like, you know, maybe if Anna had to arrive and suddenly, I don't know, some Hollywood heartthrob, I know she likes the Thor guy, I don't Chris Hemsworth, there you go, she likes Thor. So if Chris Hemsworth was to be here with his long hair and his Thor outfit and say, Anna, I'm taking you on a tour around the world and you're going to go to every single fantastic, you know, hotel and you're going to have $1 million in your bank account, you know, so we're taking you away for the next 3 months. You know, she must say, wow, it's a great prize. You know, I'm being very materialistic here, just to give a great example. But we can get deeper in this. You know, you can go, so let's, now if we take this 2 or 3 levels deeper, you can go to the shop and you've had a bad day and say, oh, I really like that shirt, or I really feel like a massage. But now you go spending money on yourself. And if you don't have the finances, or if you needed to pay your rent, so you may have self-gratified yourself because, oh no, but I've got the right to look the part, and I can buy myself a shirt, or I can go for a massage. Again, things that self-gratify you, but that self-gratification may do absolutely nothing for your matrimony.
True.
And those are the dynamics that we need to understand, is that in the relationship of marriage, it's no longer you. It's, I'm sorry, I don't want to, you know, it doesn't mean that you've become a prisoner of the marriage, not at all. You know, this is an environment that we willingly love one another and offer our love to each other. And in cultivating that, and if we cultivate that mindset, if we cultivate that understanding, we have a completely different, we will have what the world will want. I mean, because it's not money that makes a better marriage. If that were the case, everyone in Hollywood would have the best marriage.
One. Yes.
And that's not the case at all. I mean, those people are getting divorced for the 4th and 5th time, and yet they've got some of the most beautiful people on the planet that they're married to. And you can try to understand, like, I mean, if we take just as a simple example, if you take Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, I mean, those are, if humanity were to put forth, their best specimens, they've got everything. They've got the looks, they've got the popularity, they've got the money, they've got the fame. It's almost like, what else do they need? But do they have God in their lives? Do they have love for one another? Are they willing to sacrifice for one another? Because if you're not willing to do any of that, then the answer is...
And look what's happening to their family.
Yeah, exactly.
Paulo, as always, I love your passion. I know you're very passionate about the work that you do. Do you have any practical tips or some method or something, a tool that you can maybe share with us? I'm sure you have plenty in your teaching.
It's again, we can spend. I'm going to say a word here, which is not very popular on the planet again. Okay, so if I were to give tools that I think make a difference. Okay, number one, we need to cultivate listening to one another. I heard a statement being said that listening is the first duty of love.
Yes.
And when we listen, we need to listen to understand. Listen, there was this terrible stat that went around, is that people's attention span lost something like 17 seconds. Okay, after 17 seconds, they want to respond to you. So when last did we have a conversation where you spend 10 minutes listening to the other person, that you can really understand what they're trying to communicate to you? Okay, so ultimately, listen to your spouse, listen to your children. Don't listen to react, don't listen to respond. Listen to understand, listen to them. Silence is a beautiful thing. So I would turn around and say, listen to them. Really spend time listening to them. Love them. Again, this is not loving them is not oh, I love you. It's not a verbalization. It's not words. Okay, but it's behavior and action. They need to be able to experience your love, experience your the affection that you have for them, whether that affection is quality time or whether it's acts of service. I'm a very big promoter of the 5 love languages.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
People, if you're in a marriage and you haven't understood the 5 love languages, you're doing yourself a major disservice, because by not understanding how I need to be loved. Yeah. How can I possibly feel loved? I'm going to feel rejected, disconnected, and I'm not going to get them. So listening to your spouse, listening to your children, understanding them. Okay. Also, by listening to them, you're creating an environment where you are connecting with them. By listening to understand, you're setting yourself up. That you're saying to that other person, I'm sharing my life with you. That's how relevant this word is, and yet it's not something that we don't spend time with. I'm taking my 10, my 15, my half an hour, my 2 this afternoon, and I'm spending it with you. So I'm taking my life, my existence, because you're important. You matter to me. I'm giving you my attention, my undivided attention. And that goes a long way. So listening to one another. The other thing is that, especially for parents here, okay, again, this word is completely misunderstood in this day and age. Okay, it's the word discipline. And before we continue, okay, I've researched this word. I've spent quite a bit of time with it. Okay, the word discipline, much to its to people's horror, the origin of the word discipline is from the word disciple.
Interesting.
Okay? It's from the word. So if you go look it up, okay, or study the word, you'll discover that discipline is about discipleship, okay? Discipleship is about mentorship, is about guidance, is about leading. By disciplining your children, what you're doing is, okay, and I'm not talking about discipline in the sense that you've got to grab a stick and beat your children up. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay? In actual fact, that's the problem we have with that word. It's such a beautiful word that has been taken out of context because of what it's triggered in the past. Because people have taken the word discipline and now it's the belt or it's the stick, and it's got nothing to do with beating up. It's got to do with guiding. Okay?
Yeah, it's confused with punishment to a large degree.
Punishment is not discipline.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not in agreement with that at all. Okay. I'm in agreement that you need to guide, you need to teach, you need to mentor, you need to equip, teach your children. Okay. And the same thing with your spouse. I don't have it all together, and neither does she. Okay. But we are here to guide one another. We are the guardians. What is a guardian? The word God, guardian. What are they? They're there to protect and love. And ultimately, we need to discipline our children, teach our children, teach them the values of life, teach them etiquette, teach them manners. You know, you can say I'm old school, but boys should be taught to be gentlemen. Girls should be taught to be ladies, because right now, the way, if you go on Instagram and the way these things are, I mean, these girls are behaving like, I'm sorry, like they're prostitutes or like they're porn stars or something like that. I'm sorry, but that's setting a negative precedent. You know, boys are not supposed to be gangsters and thugs. You know, we've missed it. You know, why? Because the father role is missing in the family. Okay, if you go to America, one of the biggest problems they have with the disrespect in the police and the way that society is crashing at the moment, because there's a massive cry out because there's a lack of fathers, especially in certain ethnicity. So we need to create where do you love, and this is a question I've got to ask parents, do you love your children enough to discipline them? You know, can you educate yourself? Can you teach? Can you spend the time? Would you invest in resources that teach you? Because I mean, let's be honest, we don't walk into the library and suddenly, oh, look, there's so many books on how to be a better parent, or so many books on, there's no manual on how to be a better parent. I wish there was, because then we turn to page 343.
Wouldn't that be great?
You know, wouldn't that be great? Okay,
yeah.
You know, just go to www, you know, Sinta's tips, page 4, you'll get the problem there.
Yes.
You know, so ultimately that doesn't exist, but can we educate ourselves on how to be better parents? Can we discipline? Can we love our children? And then the other thing that I think, and just to basically wrap it up, so listen to them, discipline them, and ultimately create boundaries. You know, we need to teach our children and our spouses as well, that the word no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
You know, if you had all the money in the world and your 5-year-old came up to you and said, "Mommy, I want to drive your new car," are you just going to turn around and say, "Yeah, absolutely, go drive the car"? She's got no driver's license, no experience, no nothing, and now she's going to take your new car out for a drive. The problem here, if money wasn't an issue, isn't the damage that you'd cause to the new car, but that should have the potential to ruin her life or end her life or become paralyzed.
Yes.
You know? So we can sit and have this conversation and say, "Oh, Paulo, that's a stupid example. Oh, okay, so a 5-year-old wanting to take the car out for a spin is a stupid example. But a 16-year-old taking the car for what experience do they have? A 16-year-old going on a date, or a 16-year-old doing this, or now, I'm sorry, but I'm just, forgive me if maybe you can edit this out or not, but where are we as parents guiding our children when we have this stupidity? And I'm sorry, you can quote me and you can give me all the hate, I don't mind, but all this transgender stupidity that's on planet Earth at this point in time, where he identifies as a she and she identifies as something else, and my sexual preference. What does a 12-year-old know about their sexual preference in the first place? If a 12-year-old has any experience in sexuality, I'm sorry, but those parents are an absolute failure. And we need to stand up and turn around and say, no, that this narrative, that this nonsense that has been spoken, we need to stop this. We need to call a spade, and that is just immoral, and it has no space in our society. So listening to our children, disciplining them, creating an environment where there's boundaries. because
Yes.
the identity of the child has to be protected. And right now, there's a complete attack on the identity of children. If you were born a boy, and you know, without trying to be too PG-16 here, but if you came into this earth with a penis, then you're a boy, you know, and you need to identify as a boy, and you need to grow up as a man. Now, this nonsense about identifying with the opposite sex, I find that a complete attack on the masculinity and the manhood. And I don't mean masculinity in the form of, you know, what you call it, oh, it's chauvinistic. That's not what I'm talking about. But men were created by God in God's image for a purpose. And if we are not functioning in that purpose, then we are susceptible to whatever nonsense we're going to be thrown at. And we as parents have to protect our children from that. So we need to create boundaries. We need to have an environment where they are safe.
Yeah.
We can be, you know.
And we have to also want to use the same word of acceptance. We have to accept that we have certain responsibilities.
Absolutely.
In a family, albeit a blended family, because we are dealing with people who are going through divorce, we need to accept our responsibility to listen, to love, and you know, to put down the boundaries for our children. It's a very important thing. And I like what you say about love being a verb. We must say it, but we must also do it.
Correct. I mean,
very, very important. Yes.
Words of affirmation, if those of who...
That's one of the love languages.
One of the love languages.
Yes.
But it's only one.
It's only one. Very true.
Yeah. If you study the other four all have to do with activity. You know, if
exactly.
you do service, that's an activity. It's a verb.
Yes.
Okay. If you're spending quality time, you know, listening is a verb.
Yes. Yeah.
You
true.
know, because it's not just about being still while the other person monologues. Okay. It's about being engaged and connected, because you could spend 10 minutes talking to me and I turn around and ask you the question. So when your mom did that, or when your father did that, or when that colleague at work said that to you, you know, what was going in your head? You're communicating to the other person that you're paying attention to their words, and you're delving, you're inquiring. You want their emotional well-being is concerning to you. Okay, listening is not about preaching or always having the answers.
No.
Many times I don't have the answers. I'm listening and I'm going, is there something on Instagram I can turn to quickly? Because I have
yes.
what you said now, you know, especially with all the new terminologies that children keep coming up with. I've got to really, just as a joke, but the word thirsty in this day and age doesn't mean what it used to mean 10 years ago.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
if you're thirsty, it means that you'd like a drink of water. I mean, nowadays, thirsty means that, you could be desperate.
Yes.
Like,
interesting thing about the listening, and this is probably a good topic for another conversation, Paula, is I feel it's very important, as much as we need to listen to the people we love, we also need to talk to them in the sense that we need to share of ourselves. We need to let them know what's going on with us, and how we are feeling, and what the impact of their behavior is on us. So listening, I agree with you, is very important, but there are people who need to also be mindful of sharing of themselves, and let's call it talking, for lack of a better word, because that's also can also be quite a void in a relationship or in a family. You know, some people will just say, I'm fine, don't worry, and not actually ever engage in a meaningful conversation or an exchange of information and feelings and stuff.
100%. So I make statements, and statements that I do make quite a bit of, okay, is that in order for you to be, if you make the statement, okay, or if you have a thing that you're a strong person, okay, the strongest of people are those that can be vulnerable.
Yes.
There is incredible strength, there is incredible power with those who can make themselves vulnerable. Okay, the narrative and conversation here is around marriages and second marriages, blended families. Okay, and it takes an incredible amount of courage and strength to be able to render yourself vulnerable. And there's no, they normally say the truth sets you free. We've heard that many, many times, okay? And ultimately, when we engage with those that we love, if we've done something wrong, or if there is an issue that needs to be addressed, okay? Ultimately, by being open, honest, and turning around and say, hey, I misunderstood. I thought an apple was a pear.
Yes.
I didn't get it. I made a mistake. Forgive me. I'm sorry. There's nothing that forgiveness won't restore.
Yeah.
Now, if you allow pride to take the root, all pride is going to do is going to lead to bitterness, and it's going to lead to a hard-heartedness. That's all it's going to do. But if we can be vulnerable, if we can be honest with ourselves and with the other person, what that sets the precipice for is unbelievable, because what you call it, it creates an emotional transparency. It creates a connection. It actually creates a bridge from my heart to yours. I'm sharing with you an opportunity, and I'm saying, I'm giving you access to demonstrate my shortcomings, where I missed it. I'm sorry. And I'm creating an olive branch. And ultimately, we need to be able to create that environment. It's a pity, because the one person that I really look up to when it comes to parenting is actually my wife, because she's created, her and her daughters are the best of friends. And her daughter, I mean, her oldest daughter just turned 37. You know, so we're not talking about a 17-year-old girl here, you know. So we've crossed those bridges. We've gone through all of that. And ultimately, sometimes she gets off the phone and she says to me, you know, my daughters tell me too much information that I don't really think I need to know. One of them is married already. And as much as we joke that this is too much information, you know, I don't need to know, you know, that extent of information, I find it beautiful that if they were not connected with one another, you know, if there wasn't that cultivation of freedom, where I'm open and you can come talk to me about anything, whether you're talking to me about the sexual problems with your husband, or whether you've had a bad day at work with a colleague, or whether the next neighbor's dog just kept you up, you know, that you've got to be able to create that. And the only way that can be created is if you have that vulnerability where the gates of your heart are open to receive. Now, we need to be, again, you can't just be open just with anybody. I can't be vulnerable. I can be vulnerable with my wife, but I don't know if I can be vulnerable with the people that I work with here at work.
No, it's different.
In the narrative here, it has to do with family and second families. So I don't want people listening to this thinking that, you know, you can go be vulnerable to security guard.
Yes.
It's not what we're talking about here.
No, I agree. But it's beautiful in a family context, and then especially a blended family or a divorced family, is to create that abundance of the good stuff. There must be an abundance of listening and sharing and vulnerability and love and respect and all those things that are important. And as long as we keep it in abundance, it's going to be good.
Well, I totally agree with you, but the challenge that you and I both have now is to be able to educate and prepare so that people can get out there, because this pandemic that we are facing at the moment, it's reaping havoc.
Yes.
With marriages out there. The amount of phone calls I get, people wanting something to do, especially with our divorce recovery workshops. I mean, we've been forced to go on Zoom because, I mean, the churches are scared. Everyone is afraid. And please, don't get me wrong. I understand it's a pandemic. It's something that we think. But we need to get to a place that we move on. We need to move. It's almost like it has stifled us. Now everybody wants to work from home. That has created a big problem, because now people, where, I mean, in the past, they would, bye-bye, love, see you later, have, you know, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, they hit the road, you know, he goes to work, she goes to work. Now they're all working from home. So now they're in each other's faces 24/7. You know,
it's a whole new set of challenges.
And they're much bigger than anticipated, because now you're not only having to deal with the responsibility of your vocation, of whatever profession you have, and to meet the targets that are set before you do your job, but now you have to do your parental roles at the same time. Now you've got to be the teacher, because now the kids are struggling with, you know, with this homeschooling, and basically that all the education is now done on Zoom, like very much like what we are doing here. And ultimately the parents are now thrown or extremely stretched, and marriages are breaking out there, left, right, and center. So by next year thereafter, that's when we were actually going to see the full ramification of what the pandemic has actually done to marriages here.
Yeah.
But what I'm picking up is that it's bad out there. It's really bad at the moment.
It is, yeah. Thank you so much for all of this. I think we must have a series of conversations, because there are just too many topics to get to. I'm looking forward to that. But thank you very much, Paulo. I appreciate your contribution, and I love your passion as always, and keep up the good work.
And the same thing goes to you,
Yeah.
Sinta. Thank you that however these two dots got connected, I'm very grateful that they have. And then ultimately all we're trying to do is just bring a little bit of light to our dark corner. That's really all it is. And hopefully that there can be fruits from this, that people can learn, because to me the big thing is that people, so I may not be a good example, but I can be a good warning. And ultimately, that's all I want to do. I just want to be a stop sign that says, don't go in that direction.
Don't go there. Very well said.
If I can be a stop sign, then let me be the best stop sign I can possibly be.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're functioning in.
Very well said. I'm gonna use that one. I like it very much.
Thank you. I stole that from one of the people on my workshop. So I'd like to take credit for that. Really.
Thank you very much. And regards to Anna.
Shall definitely do that. Thanks for all the best, and I look forward to chatting in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be in touch. Thanks. Keep well, eh? Okay. Bye-bye.